All right, good afternoon. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. It's a market kind of waiting a little bit today. We saw it gap up and make a move, and it just kind of has hung out. At this level the rest of the day here. Not a whole lot in it. If I zoom into the 1 minute chart, you can kind of see what this looks like. We had the open, the gap up, and then we had this kind of 15-minute period where futures rose 10 points, and they've just stayed in that range here the rest of the day. It's a fairly bullish stack when you look at the sectors that are moving here today. When you look at the stocks that are on the move here today, it's a bullish stack when you look at the gain versus loss. But we're not talking about, stocks with big moves here today, intraday. I mean, here's Adobe. It gapped up and it's been here all day. Right? It's not like we're talking about, hey, there's some movement where investors are stepping in and jumping in. There's a little bit of it when you look at some of the oversold companies like a Caterpillar, and it looks like just some of the short squeezing kind of coming out, or some of the short element coming out of the market. But things like Raytheon, just gapped up, bleeding lower more than higher. Big bullish ones like Chipotle, gap up and just kind of hang out all day here. That's just been the norm for most stocks. UTX in that same category, Honeywell in the same category. The banks have had a little bit more of a drift up in them here today, but most things just kind of in that exact same category of no real major movement outside the gap, or if they have had it, they're generally stocks that have been lagging in a big way. Caterpillar, Alcoa, FedEx, those types of names here in the market today. We do see the EWZ Brazil, which is the Brazilian ETF, which has been very different than U.S. equities. It has just continued to go up all day, and it just continued to erase days worth of selling. We saw the breakdown in the ETF, right back here a week and a half ago. And today's actions erasing what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days worth of selling. You can look at this type of move on an ETF like EWZ, and the next day sometimes it'll be down, or the next 2 days it'll be down. But normally, this is something that's followed with a sharp move higher. So a very nice move out of this Brazilian ETF. If you look at some of the Brazilian components like a Vale, nice little reversal on it here today. PBR, nice action on it here today. BBD, Banco Bradesco, very nice action on it here today. So one of the more bullish reversals that we're seeing out there in the market today, and one of the few areas where we're talking about things going from bearish trend and showing a sign of big bad bullish reversal coming into play. Most other things, we're not talking about that yet. Apple, we could be talking about it later on, but it's just kind of this little oversold rebound back to the 7-day moving average here, as some of yesterday's fears come off with just some of the change in the perceived policy from the market here. So anyway, that's what's going on out there. Market vibe is up a point today, and still a neutral reading, but only a point away from a bullish reversal. So very close there. It's 3 points away from a bearish reversal, but we see things like a bullish percent index, which I showed this morning, just not moving a heck of a whole lot. We're not, and this kind of goes to that fact that we're not seeing a lot of stock go from bullish modes to bearish modes, or bearish modes to bullish modes here. We are seeing a lot of consolidation, or kind of just mini trend corrections happening out there today. Now, for the 100K challenge, I thought for sure we'd get a trigger here today. I'm very surprised we didn't, but given the fact given the way the market's moved here today, maybe I shouldn't be too surprised. A couple things very close. Honeywell, very close here, but just gap is just stuck here, and not the type of action you typically see ahead of the next big run. This could signal tomorrow, right? With a little bullishness. Raytheon, didn't trigger yesterday. I thought, man, maybe this will trigger today. It hasn't. We have Nike, which had a chance of triggering bearish, but it reversed. So there's just not a lot where you go, wow, okay, monster trend, ready to happen. Bristol Myers kind of has a resumption of the bull signal that it triggered last week, but the bullish signal was still in play here for it. So it's not a fresh new signal, but very bullish action nonetheless there for Bristol Myers. I did look at the options. They're not quite to where I want to trade the challenge with those options here just yet. So the challenge has a position on J&J. J&J up about 20 cents here on the day for the stock. And if we come in and we look, the stock price is 138.63. And 138.63, and you can see when made the trade yesterday, the stock price was 138.60. So the stock price has moved 3 cents. Right now, the option value has changed and gone down. It's down about a little less than $200, but down about 10% here to $1.80. Is it a big deal? Well, it increases the risk of the trade, absolutely. But it is something that is one of the costs of making a trade on a Monday morning post-option expiration. And, you oftentimes hear me talk about that kind of option expiration period and, a little cool down period needed there for that. And that's really, what we're saying. We're seeing that kind of, hey, the options were overvalued by about 10%. And that's the cost that's being realized right now for it. Now, there's always an argument, well, do you make the trade or not? Yeah, it's 10% overvalued, but if you have a trade that's going to appreciate 100, 200% in value, do you fuss over 10%? And the reality when it comes to the challenge and the algorithm, no, not at all. Right, not at all. So, it'd be nice to see J&J kick on back up and push on higher, and get us in the green. And this is a stock that's showing all sorts of signs of 142, 143 coming into play as it's come off this lower band. Good volume move off that lower band, pushing back above the 7. But not making it happen here today. Now we did see J&J, and I put it in the notes. We did see J&J make kind of a midday move, and this was a court ruling. Right here is the minute chart, and you can see the drop, and then the pop, and we're right kind of in that area. But this was a court ruling here that they had to pay $25 million in damages over talcum powder, and there may be some more damages to be awarded there against J&J. Nothing new for the company. If you've ever followed Johnson & Johnson for any period of time, it is something that you hear about quite often. But it is one of those things where right back here, this was a huge, a huge element, a huge piece that came in. And, the stock has climbed back, but there's a little fear from investors still with that. We saw that kind of come into play a little bit here today, but it's one of those things. You look through J&J's news feed, it's almost a monthly, bi-monthly type of occurrence where it will see that. And let's face it, even with that news, the range on Johnson & Johnson today is smaller than it is most days. So, not something that, obviously the challenge doesn't care about the news, it doesn't take into account the news at all. But that is what we saw, come into play here this morning with J&J. Okay. All right. I did not get a chance to jump on today and do a live video on the Ishimoku Cloud. I did, though, post a training that I did a few years ago on the Ishimoku Clouds, and that training also had some talk about technical overlays and using them as stops in trading. Some really good stuff in there. Feel free to go and access that on your own time there. And if you have any questions, please let me know. We'll be happy to address those as we go forward. And then we'll get back to the live trainings here this week as well. Okay, so nothing really to change here for the challenge. It's one of those where I'd like to get a little more exposure into play right here. Challenge just kind of creeping along a little bit. So hopefully we'll get some of these signals pushing in and pushing strong here sooner than later. I do kind of think Facebook is really interesting here from a trade standpoint. It's not quite a trigger here. You see, it doesn't have the 3-7 cross, but this is something that a small gap up tomorrow could create. That I would not be surprised to see a bullish trigger come in here to Facebook, and I would not be surprised if the market mood changes just slightly if we didn't see Facebook chase up to 200 sooner than later, given the overall pattern that is developing. So it would be nice to get a signal there, but we'll see how it plays on out. Thanks for hopping on. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.